Welcome to Driven Ops Power Talk. I'm Jazmine Moore.
And I'm Rebecca Heisey. We're two work besties who have spent over a decade learning the ins and outs of sales and marketing.
On this podcast, we discuss all things go-to-market operations, the people, processes, and technologies that make up the engine of a thriving go-to-market function. Let's get to it. All right, welcome back to Driven Ops Power Talk, where we talk all things revenue operations. I'm Jazmine Moore.
And I'm Becca Heisey.
And we have an exciting topic for you today. It's one that's always timely. We are going to be talking about adding tools to your tech stack.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to this. It's a tricky topic sometimes, but we'll talk through it.
Every time I think about buying a new tool, I think of Scott Brinker's famous infographic, Scott Brinker from Chief Martech in HubSpot. So every year he unveils this amazing infographic of all of the tools in the MarTech landscape. Have you seen this infographic?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness. He started it in like 2011, and at that time the infographic had about 150 tools, and it was very impressive. It was like, oh my gosh, look at all these tools. The landscape is saturated. And in the most recent one, 2023, can you guess how many tools was in it?
I'm sure a lot, but I don't know.
Over 11,000.
That's insane. How do you even start?
I know. Like, the time it took to even like paste those logos on this infographic, but it's amazing. And it just speaks to the abundance of MarTech tools that are in the landscape right now. And every time we go to select one, there's more that pop up.
From. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it's just, that's overwhelming, I would say. That's very overwhelming to even think about. And how do you start then?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah. How do you select one?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that we would like to talk about in this episode around this is your business requirements when you are looking for a new tool to add to your tech stack. So part of the business requirements is knowing who is going to use the tool, getting the teams involved that are going to be a part of the process, maybe using the tool, but also just might be in some of the motion, whether it's just like when you're implementing it, whether you're trying to get a budget, whatever it is, you need to talk to like different teams. And then you also have to know how many users you're going to have on the platform. Yeah. Is it going to be just one admin who's kind of managing it and maybe executing things within the tool? Or are you going to have hundreds of users in the platform that you have to manage and understand their process and their workflow? And that can get tricky because now you're just adding more stakeholders to the mix, right?
Well, heavy on adding the stakeholders to the mix.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want to do is make a unilateral decision and purchase a tool and not involve everyone who's going to be touching the tool. That is a huge mistake. So every step that we talk about and every tip that we talk about include stakeholders.
Yes, totally. Because the worst thing you can do then is get further down in the process of evaluation, or maybe even getting to the point where you are bringing the tool on, and now you've got some random person who's like raising their hand and saying, this is going to impact us, or this isn't going to work, or I want to be involved now. And you almost have to start from the beginning because you have to re-scope out how that works with their setup or just their processes. And so that brings me to a second point, is making sure you understand how the tool will impact processes, because the tool might look great to you from a high level view, but what is that really going to do to the end user? You kind of have to map out the entire workflow of what that tool does, how it's going to impact users. Again, like if you're just an admin, let's say like in Marketo, you probably could have, depending on how large your company is, a couple users, right? You have a few people who are just managing the campaigns and managing whatever's going on in Marketo, but then you have tools like, say, a sales engagement platform like Outreach or SalesLoft or something like that, where now you have probably hundreds of sales users that are in the platform, selling in the platform. And what does that process look like, right? So, and then on top of it, you also have to be aware of how does that integrate with like, Salesforce or something, right? You have to really map out all of these types of things, any kind of CRM tool, other tech stack that's involved, what tools are not available to be integrated as well, like in the processes, right? It can just, you really have to just think through all of that to make sure nothing breaks late down the road when you're so far in.
As operators, we act as system integrators. It's our responsibility to know what workflows are being executed across the go-to-market system and where are those workflows combining and connecting, because we always want to look for places to optimize, to reduce friction, and process and technology is a big part of that. So when you're purchasing a tool, you want to be considerate of all of the different workflows and how they connect with other workflows, because you're doing yourself and your organization a disservice if you're narrow-minded and you're thinking of, okay, here is the top workflow that I'm purchasing this. There are supporting processes that are always related, and you could probably map out a whole tree of different processes that will ultimately be related to this tool. So be considerate of that. Do not make unilateral decisions, and you will be on your way.
Yeah, definitely. And lastly, around this sort of section of the topic is budget as well. So again, knowing who are going to be users in the platform is key, because that's going to be how many licenses you have, right? And you have to make sure that you have the right budget, that you're getting approved for your budget, and that's just huge, because you never know what other types of things can be involved in the tech stack. Like maybe there's additional add-ons you didn't think about, that come in place. So maybe it looks really fancy when you're first just looking at it on the site and you're like, oh, I want these features. Next thing you know, those are additions. That's not even included in the general pricing. So knowing your budget and knowing what's actually relevant to what you need in the tech stack.
And that tier pricing can get very expensive. And so a lot of tools have free versions, which is great. HubSpot has a starter version that is free. It can get you started. But the more you want to do, the more you get into advanced features like workflows, and you want to really bring in your go-to-market system, you have to go up your tiers. And in any tool, that's going to cost you more. So be cognizant of the budget that you have so that you're not shooting above it.
Yeah, definitely.
So how about integrations? So I feel like that is probably one of the first things that we're looking for. How can this integrate? Most people use CRMs, and most tools that we buy, one of the first questions is, can this integrate with our CRM? I think that's an important take on just general user experience.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to make sure that the fields that you need will integrate, right? So like if you're using a CRM, any kind of tool that you're looking to use probably has some kind of activity or reporting that you're looking to capture, right? And you want to make sure that that's all going to give you what is needed and does match and work with the other tech stack that you have and integrates appropriately.
So that brings me to my favorite one is, which I don't know if it's my favorite one, but it's definitely the most fun, writing out all of the features and functionalities, because this is a great opportunity for a nice spreadsheet, and I love a spreadsheet. So when we're selecting a tool, of course, we're comparing it with other tools. So this is a great time to get out your spreadsheet and start listing all of the features and functionalities of each tool, and you can start comparing them. I have a template that I use in Google Sheets, and it's just a very nice visual to see the hits and misses. And then a tip is to take it a step further in all of those features and functionalities, categorize them as must-haves or nice-to-haves.
Yes, definitely. Definitely important, because sometimes you have a gap, but you really need to focus on how important that gap is, right? Like, is it just it's kind of a pain point, it's a little annoying, but it's not breaking anything. It's not completely ruining everyone's work experience on their day-to-day, right? But if it's a major gap and that's really what initially started you on the process, then that's what's important to like evaluate in those key points that you're looking for in the tech tool that you're trying to evaluate.
I love that you bring that up, because a lot of us, that reason why we started this whole process in the first place is because there was a gap identified by you or someone else that you're looking to fill with this tool. Unfortunately, there's so many tools out there. We can look at Scott Breaker's infographic, and you can get very excited with all of the bells and whistles because they're really doing some neat stuff with AI now and integrations, but you can lose sight of why you started this process in the first place.
Exactly.
And by the end of it, you're in love with this tool because it could do so many things, but then when someone asks you, well, is it filling the gap? And you're like, And so do not lose sight of that initial pain point of why you started this process in the first place.
And it's always exciting. It's like Christmas Day and you're just like, or, you know, any holiday you get a present or something and you're like, oh, it's shiny and it's exciting and it's new and it's like a fun toy to play with. But then at the same time, you do have to sort of keep your cool and not get, you know, starstruck by all the fancy things, because at the end of the day you do have to make sure that your sales rep who's trying to sell you this tool is also not just saying yes to everything, like yes we can do that and yes we can do this, but when you're really evaluating it, you need to dig deep and say, can you really do this based on our experience, the way we run our business? Is it really going to function and flow the way we want it to, or is something going to break and we're going to be mad at the vendor because they said it can do it and it really can't? So you definitely need to like evaluate all of that.
And do not succumb to shiny tool syndrome.
Yeah.
And that's our responsibility, right?
Yeah.
As someone else who may have requested this tool, well, it's not their responsibility to research the tool, making sure that it is secure, it meets the security requirements of your organization, it has everything that's needed. A good chance there's someone who's working on one process who's like, I need this tool for this specific thing, but most of the time the tool can fulfill all of the needs. So as system integrators and operators, it's our responsibility to understand that and recognize that this tool should be used across all teams, as many teams as possible, and what are the core functions that we'll actually utilize and start to see ROI from.
Yeah, definitely. Good points there. And I think another thing that is important to make sure that you do is, while you're evaluating and checking all those boxes, making sure that you're running through a pilot or something, like making sure that you get a chance to really demo the tool. So, you know, you can use a couple days experience, you can test it out for, you know, maybe a week, but what happens if that's not the full user experience that you need, right? You need to maybe try to get a real POC in place where you're evaluating it for like 2 weeks or maybe 30 days, where you can actually get other people involved and go through the whole motion of what you do day to day, so that you can actually come back and say, this does what we needed to do, or maybe it still also adds gaps, you know, to what we're looking for.
And don't be afraid to pilot. It's really easy to sign up for a demo, 7 days. We get to try the tool. That may not be enough, and most of the time it isn't. If you're dealing with a large team, you have a lot of users, you have leverage. You're talking to a salesperson. They want to sell you this. And
definitely.
So do not be afraid to ask them to let your whole team try it. And pilot it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Exactly.
If it's going to be a big enough sale, it's going to be worth it to them. So don't be afraid to ask for that.
And also, when you're getting down to it, always make sure you negotiate if you get to it. That's definitely important for your budget.
That part.
Make sure you go that route. Don't forget it.
And everything is negotiable. I had a previous boss that really gave me some negotiation chops. He tried to, at least, but I always listen to the tips that he has given me. Everything is negotiable, so always try. And that could even be onboarding. Like, it doesn't even have to be price, because when you're selecting a tool, you're going to be thinking about, you should be thinking about onboarding, and you should be asking the rep, okay, when we sign, what does onboarding look like, and how can we implement this to my team successfully?
Exactly. Definitely making sure that those extra little tidbits or bells and whistles are included if you can, because you don't want to get into the place where it's all nice during the trial and then you're abandoned basically once you're in place, and then you're just like scrounging to put it in a working motion for yourself. So
look at it as the part of the project. If you're buying a tool, you have a whole project life cycle in place, and a part of that is implementation, onboarding, and training.
Definitely.
Very key.
Definitely. And lastly, also remember that you just don't have to add to your tech stack. So as we mentioned, it's really important to make sure that you keep focus on your gap, right? Like the whole point of you looking at tech stack is because you probably have a gap somewhere, and that's why you're trying to fill that void, right? But at the end of the day, if you're just consistently adding more tools for minor gaps, you're just adding more problems to yourself because now you're just dealing with multiple tools that you have to manage that are actually probably going to create more problems for you down the line. Or maybe even duplication, right?
So plot twist, just don't buy it.
Just don't, yeah, exactly. So here's all the reasons on what to think about, but then at the end, maybe just don't even do it. Yeah.
But it's a good point because sometimes you may not need it.
Yeah.
What I've seen in the past is sometimes business leaders come in and they have a system that they want to put in place, and immediately they want to look to see, okay, I'm used to this system, let's get this. And that could be detrimental to the workflow and process that you have in place, because you may have a different system, but it could be running very smoothly across the teams. So don't be afraid to push back either and say, let's look at, what this system can give us and see if we're not getting it with what we have now.
Yeah. And it's important too that like the person who's maybe the individual contributor or the person who's in the ops position that has the most experience around actually managing the tech stack and even generally is most likely familiar with a lot of the processes that are in place. A lot of times you will get those leaders who are outside of the ops org and the function, and they're just hearing complaints from other people and they go, we need to fix this, right? Like, let's just look at this tool. It does this type of thing. But they're not actually thinking also about the repercussions that it can also add. They're just trying to, again, fill the void because they might be hearing complaints or somebody's like, oh, like you said, oh, I used to use this tool and it's great, but okay, but like, let's think about this holistically.
Yeah. And for the leaders out there, empower your administrator and the folks that are in these tools every day to push back and speak up and explain their expertise in the space and why it might not be the best decision.
Yep.
Oh, it is coffee talk.
Yay, coffee talk.
So I love this segment. It's where we talk about a topic that's top of mind. We have a fun one today. So what are we going to talk about today, Becca?
Work faux pas.
Oh, work faux pas.
Yeah.
So what happened? What are some things that happen at work that you it just grinds your gears?
Yeah, grinds your gears for sure. So one of the work faux pas that I would say is maybe a little bit, it gets under your skin a little bit, is when you're maybe not on an initial email thread, and they need to loop you in, right? So you get CC'd to the email. It's probably already been going on for a couple days. Next thing you know, you're just tacked onto the email with no explanation. It's like, just plus Becca. And now I'm sitting here like, I don't even understand what's going on. I have to try to piece together this long email chain and how it loops together with all the details that are relevant.
That's the worst.
Yeah, and generally you miss something.
You always do, and it's like playing Tetris, trying to figure out what piece goes after another, and then when people forward things and reply, you're trying to like go back. Please don't do this.
Yes, like just add a little summary.
Give me a TLDR.
Yeah, so exactly.
Can I get a TLDR?
Please, something. Like any little bit of looping you in, or even, you know what, if it's like too hard to explain an email, let's have like a 10-minute sync real quick. Give me some idea of what I'm getting into, because I don't want the headache. Like, please, just help me out.
So about that quick 10-minute sync.
Yeah.
So my faux pas is I can get quite disrupted when someone slacks me or messages me on Teams, hi, or do you got a minute? Yeah. And I'm like, all right, get to the point. And it's just like, come on, hi. Am I supposed to say hi?
Yeah, right.
Well, we've wasted 5 minutes of both of our times. I love the pleasantries and I love everyone I work with, and yes, say hello. Yeah. But you need something. Yeah. You want something. You got to tell me something.
That's true.
So I have probably done this in the past, actually. So I make it a point to say, I say all my sentences in the first set. Hi, how are you? Hope you're well. This is what I need.
Yeah.
Here's my question. And I think people appreciate that. And I don't think it comes across rude.
No.
It's, it's brass tacks.
I think I'm more like you. I'm the same way. I go, hey, good morning, good afternoon. Hope your whole week is going great. Here's the issue I'm running into. But I agree. I've had people who do the same thing. It's like, hello. And then they don't say anything. And then you're like, and sometimes you just can't respond, right? Because you're in back-to-back meetings and you're just like, this person never responded after they said hello. So like, do I just say hello back? And it's been like 2 hours and I don't know.
I've forgotten about it by then.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't really know. I know that's definitely a little hard to manage. Or now, I mean, on top of like just the hellos, like how's it going kind of thing, and then no explanation, you also get we work from home, but even when you're like in the office, like people would just walk up to your desk and be like, hey, you got a minute, right?
Got a minute.
Now the opposite of that when you're remote is just like, hey, you have no meeting booked. You finally have maybe like 30 minutes to catch up on emails, catch up on Slack messages, whatever you can do. And they're like, hey, are you free? Can you sync right now?
Are you free?
Like, I'm not free.
Right
I guess I'll help you. Like, sure, I'm free, I guess.
You always want to say yes, of course, and
yeah.
it's important, but here's a tip: protect your calendar.
That's true. Protect your time. I
have been time blocking a focus time at least once a week, just a couple hours. I need just focus, heads down. It's a productivity tip.
Oh, it's a need. It's a must. I do the same thing because you're responsible for getting things done, and you're in booked back-to-back meetings all day long, and then you finally get a couple of minutes and you're like, nope, I'm still in meetings. It's just not showing on my calendar now. So yeah, that's a hard one for sure.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Things to do when you're looking to buy a tool in your tech stack.
Yeah, good luck.
Happy hunting.
Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms.
Keep up with us on all of our hot takes on all things go-to-market operations. See you next time.